Attention, Commanders! Breaking news! What's happening could change everything! First, the ground attack is in crisis. Despite the victory against the Eagles, our running game is crumbling. Can we survive in the playoffs without our physical identity? Uncover the truth behind the fall of our star runner and the offensive line. Second, bombshell, a high draft pick out of the team. What does this mean for our defense and the future of the Commanders? Are we failing to develop our young talent? Don't miss the details that could reveal a bigger crisis. Third, Ben Sinnott, the quiet rookie. Are we wasting our second-round tight end? Could he become the key to our offensive future? Find out if we're handling his development correctly or if we're making a serious mistake. Commanders fans, let's talk straight here because this is serious. Despite the big 36-22 win against the Eagles, there's a problem we can't ignore. The Commanders' ground attack is losing steam, and that, folks, is a serious issue. What's the point of making the playoffs if our team identity, the physical and dominant run game, is falling apart? I'll cut to the chase. Brian Robinson Jr., our workhorse, has had a tough season recently. His 2 fumbles in the last game almost cost us the victory. And let's face it, if the Eagles had managed the clock just 10 seconds longer at any point, we'd probably be lamenting an embarrassing loss. And don't get me started on the yards per carry average. Robinson has spent more time this month trying to regain ground than pushing forward with force. But hold up, I'm not here to point at Robinson as the only one responsible. This is as much a running back problem as it is an offensive line issue. And now I ask you, where's that offensive line that made us dream at the beginning of the season? Where's that group that commanded respect, that pushed the opposing defense over and over until they were left breathless? I'm telling you this, that energy and consistency have been lost, and the numbers confirm it. The blocking grades have plummeted, and if you can't win in the trenches, forget about imposing the run game. What changed? I ask you, is the problem physical? Is it mental? Well, I think it's a mix of both. At the beginning of the season, this offensive line played with pride, clashing helmet to helmet with their rivals because that aggressiveness got results. Winning, friends, fixes any wound. But at some point, after tough losses to the Steelers and Cowboys, something went out. Doubts began to emerge. And you know what happens when you start to doubt as a player? Everything falls apart. Your blocks come late. You get lost in the assignment. And that's exactly what we've seen. Even Coach Dan Quinn has acknowledged it. And I'm telling you this, I agree with Quinn. The execution has to be faster. They have to leave doubt behind and return to dominating the line of scrimmage. I loved hearing from Quinn that he's asked his players, if you're going to make mistakes, do it at full speed, because friends, I'm going to be honest. I prefer an aggressive mistake to a cowardly one. The Commanders need to recapture that winning mentality, that aggressiveness that made them stand out at the beginning. What about Jayden Daniels? Let's talk about the elephant in the room. This kid is pulling the chestnuts out of the fire. Jayden Daniels, our rookie phenomenon, is taking more prominence than he should. And don't get me wrong, it's a luxury to have such a dynamic quarterback. But if we rely exclusively on him to save the day, friends, our season is destined to end sooner than we expect. Because when the playoffs come, we need to be a complete team. We need a strong ground attack to sustain offensive series, eat the clock, and give the defense rest. If we keep burning Daniels as if he were our only salvation, sooner or later we'll run out of gas. Now, how does Washington revive its ground game? I'm telling you this, the solution isn't solely in Robinson. It's the entire offensive scheme that needs to be adjusted. They have to go back to basics, run to the correct gaps, block as if your life depended on it, be more physical than the opponent, and above all, believe in the process. Because if we continue on this path of doubts and slow steps, any team we face in the playoffs will tear us apart. Oh, and a message for the offensive line. Guys, if there's one thing I've learned from football, it's this. The playoffs are not for the faint of heart. If you don't regain that intensity and brutality in the trenches, we don't stand a chance. So now I ask you, Washington Commanders fans, looking at our offensive line and ground attack, do you think this team has what it takes to correct course before the playoffs? Or are we doomed to rely solely on Daniel's magic? I'm reading you in the comments because I want to know everything. And now let's talk about news that's causing a stir. Hot off the press from Ashburn, the Washington Commanders have officially waived defensive lineman Mathys. And let me tell you this straight up, without beating around the bush, This is more than just moving pieces on the board for operational reasons. Here we're talking about a significant investment that simply didn't bear the expected fruit. The organization is saying, enough, and that sends a loud and clear message. Phidarian Mathys, a former second-round player picked 47th overall in the 2022 draft, was supposed to be one of the future pillars in the defensive line. What happened here? Why does such a high pick become history after just 3 seasons? I'm telling you this, injuries and lack of consistency on the field doomed him. But honestly, we should also analyze whether the development and leadership from the coaching staff in shaping young talents has failed to fulfill its part of the deal. Are the Commanders doing enough to maximize the production of their prospects? I ask. Let's talk about Mathys. This guy came from Alabama, a program known for producing stars on both sides of the line of scrimmage. He arrived in Washington with high expectations. But, friends, it all came crashing down in his first game as a pro. Yes, he suffered a meniscus tear in his NFL debut, an injury that left him out for the rest of his rookie season. And I believe it was at that moment when the path for Mathys began to get complicated, because in this league, trains don't wait. You get injured, someone else takes your place, and sometimes you never get that spot back. The 2023 season wasn't any kinder. He arrived with a calf injury that sidelined him at the start, and when he finally joined the action, his impact was minimal. Friends, in this league, you only have a short window to prove what you're made of, and if you can't, you know what happens. The team moves on. It's that simple, that brutal. This year, it seemed Mathys would have the opportunity to find his place in a defensive line loaded with talent. But even with injuries to key figures like Jonathan Allen, Mathys simply couldn't make himself noticed. Sure, he had his snaps 257 to be exact in 12 games. But he was never that anchor in the line that could complement Darren Payne or Jerzan Newton. The coaches clearly saw it. Backups Sheldon Day, Jalen Holmes, and Carl Davis started taking the snaps that once seemed reserved for Mathys. The Commanders can't afford to keep someone on the roster if they're not performing. Now I ask, do you think Mathys had enough time and opportunities to prove his worth? I'm not so sure, but I also understand that this league doesn't wait for anyone. What does this decision mean? On one hand, this seems to open the door for Jonathan Allen's activation. This is the guy who really changes the equation on that defensive line, and his nearly complete recovery after a pectoral injury comes just in time for the end of the season and playoffs. If Allen comes back and is at 100%, we could see a renaissance in that unit that has caused so many problems for opposing offenses. But on the other hand, letting Mathys go is admitting that your second-round bet didn't work out. This brings us back to the eternal question. Are the Commanders handling their draft well? Because friends, if I give you a second-round pick, I expect immediate impact or sustained growth. I can't accept less. Dan Quinn and company now have to make sure that those taking up those snaps, Day, Holmes, Davis, or even Newton, can step up their game and become impact players in this crucial stretch of the season. Because believe me, the defense needs all the weight and domination possible now that we're approaching the playoffs. And now, let's move on to Mathys. They've put him on the waiver wire, which means any team can claim him and give him a new chance. What can we expect here? Well, I believe someone will take him. This kid has pedigree, comes from Alabama, and so far injuries have been his main obstacle. There's talent in there. The question is whether someone can bring it out. Does he return to a team with a more patient coaching staff willing to give him time? Maybe. But one thing's for sure, his time in Washington ended in the worst possible way. To close this complicated chapter, I want to hear from the fans. Was it a mistake to select Phidarian Mathys in the second round of 2022? Or do you think the Commanders failed him by not properly managing his development? Let me know in the comments because this topic, gentlemen, is on fire. This is something we need to analyze thoroughly. Washington has had an impressive harvest with their rookie class in the 2024 draft. Jaden Daniels, Mike Sainristil, Brandon Coleman, and even Jerzan Newton have been names that are already starting to shine as starters in key positions. But let's talk about Ben Sinnott, our second-round tight end, who seems to be flying under the radar this season. Now I ask you, what can we expect from Sinnott? And is he really on the right track to meet the expectations of a premium pick? Let's be clear, not every rookie becomes an instant star. Some need time to adapt, especially if they're behind a veteran like Zach Ertz, a future Hall of Famer and one of the best tight ends this league has seen. And Cliff Kingsbury, the Commanders' offensive coordinator, couldn't have said it better. Sinnott is very talented, but he's still in the learning process, particularly in the blocking aspect. I think Kingsbury is being realistic here. You don't have a young tight end every day who can dominate in both blocking and the passing game from week 1. Now, Sinnott has played in all 15 games of the season and has had 2 starts. His production has been modest, just 5 receptions on 5 targets for 28 yards and a touchdown. Does that mean Sinnott is a failure? Absolutely not. His main opportunity this year has come in blocking schemes, and although Kingsbury admits he's in the process of improvement, he also highlights that he's made notable advances. Let's not forget, the jump in level between college and the NFL is brutally different, especially for a tight end who not only needs outstanding physical skills but also a superior tactical understanding. It's true that Sinnott has played a secondary role in Washington's offense, but that shouldn't worry fans. The main reason? Zach Ertz. This veteran has been a key mentor for Sinnott and, according to Kingsbury, has been a fundamental piece in Jayden Daniels' development as well. The reality is that Sinnott is receiving a first-class education in the tight end position, and that puts him in a privileged position for the future. I'm telling you this, the Commanders see the development of their young players as an investment, and Sinnott is part of that long-term plan. In 2025, the hope is that he'll have a more prominent role in the passing game, especially if Ertz starts to reduce his workload or eventually leaves the team. Currently, Sinnott is learning from one of the greats while assimilating a demanding offensive system led by Kingsbury. If Sinnott manages to consolidate his ability as a blocker and continues to polish his potential as a receiver, we could be seeing a quality starter in development. There's another important point here. Not all teams give their second-round players time to develop. In other franchises, the pressure would be much greater to produce instantly, but Washington is handling this situation with a cool head. Patience will pay dividends in the long run. I remember similar cases where proper planning led to players seemingly forgotten during their first year ending up as fundamental pieces later on. Sinnott's success also depends on the system in which they develop, and what a tremendous opportunity he has here in Washington with a creative offensive coordinator like Kingsbury and a quarterback like Jayden Daniels. As Daniels grows even more as a passer, he'll need a reliable tight end to serve as an escape valve in the most critical situations. I ask you, who better to fulfill that role in 2025 than Sinnott, a player with good technique and physical potential? Let's not forget how the tight end position has defined offenses on other NFL teams. In Kansas City, Travis Kelce is Patrick Mahomes' best friend. In San Francisco, George Kittle is a fundamental engine of the offensive scheme. If Sinnott can channel some of that kind of impact, we'd be talking about an irreplaceable weapon for the Commanders in the future. Friends, here's my question for you. With just 5 receptions and a reduced role in the offense, are the Commanders handling Ben Sinnott's development correctly? Or do you think they should give him more opportunities to shine now? Let me read your opinions in the comment section because this is a debate that deserves attention. Washington Commanders fans, now it's your turn to weigh in. After analyzing our offensive line and ground attack, do you think we have what it takes to correct course before the playoffs, or will we continue to rely solely on Daniels' magic? Also, on the Phidarian Mathys case, do you think it was a mistake to select him in the second round of the 2022 draft? Or rather, did the team fail to guide his development correctly? And we can't leave out Ben Sinnott. With just 5 receptions and such a limited role, are we handling this young talent correctly, or is there something that should change urgently? We want to know what you think. Your voice is crucial to this community, and together we can discuss the future of this team. So leave me your opinion in the comments and join this family of Commanders lovers who live the passion of the game every week. Don't forget to like the video, share it with other fans, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any updates, analysis, or debate. Thanks for being part of this incredible journey together, and always remember, hail to the Redskins!